Hardcore Lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you. I'm your Wednesday evening host here at BodyBags, and it is week 383, fresh off our winter horror themed week. We close out the month of December with this final week as we lead into January, and hopefully a much better year is upon us than the one that just preceded us. So here we go on the last week of the month. I thought I would change it up just a little bit. I recently got this as an early Christmas present. That is before Christmas, right? And I was unfamiliar with this movie in terms of having seen it, never seen it. But I knew of the title vaguely, but I didn't know really anything about the film. Let's just say, since I got it, I've watched it at least 3 full times. And this is one of the most amazing, creepiest narratives underlining an older drive-in circuit film I might have seen in a while. This is some good stuff that maybe potentially has been bypassed by most. Although if you throw the name in there, Silent Night, Bloody Night from 1972, it's a Theodore Gershuny film. You will see there's a lot of activity on YouTube in terms of people having reviewed it and whatnot. But I think this is the first time it's been mentioned on BodyBags. Pretty sure this is a first review. And of course, I've already said the title, Silent Night, Bloody Night from 1972. Actually made in 70, but released in 72 on the drive-in circuit. And then unfortunately, it ultimately fell into public domain. And I say unfortunately because it is a movie that is very much worth being given the royal treatment by somebody like Arrow or somebody like that. Now this is the high definition restoration from the 35 millimeter film chest. So if you can find this one, now this film is, I mean, you'll see it out there and about Dollar Trees and stuff like that, I'm sure. And I'm telling you, it is worth every penny of the low end of things that you may possibly end up seeing it for. I would almost say, seeing it now and understanding the film, I would pay a whole lot more than $1 for this thing. But it would be nice to get a nice, better transfer, and maybe a nice commentary, on there from a film historian. Anyways, so Silent Night, Bloody Night. Patrick O'Neill leads the cast. James Patterson's in this thing. Mary Woronov. Let's see. John Carradine is in this thing. Philip Bruns, I think is his name. It's an interesting cast. Some of these folks are familiar with the Andy Warhol crowd, and so from what I've read, and I'm just really getting into the history of this film, what you get here is a really interesting presentation in terms of just how twisted and creepy, in light of some of the actors who came over into this film and sort of filled out the cast. It is an amazing story. One that might not hit you in the fullest upon first viewing, but once you get to that end and the reveal, and then beyond that and start thinking about just how twisted. I mean, I don't know if there's really, except for maybe one, really likable character in this entire film. They all have their issues big time. Again, it did drive in it was in the drive-in circuit of the early 70s, and then of course it fell into public domain. So when you talk about this film, I really, unlike last week, I really want to stay spoiler-free as much as I can, because if you've never seen this, and I have a funny feeling more of you have not seen it than maybe have seen it, you really need to see it, and you need to see it as cold as possible. But in order to kind of lay an interesting foundation, I think, without spoiling anything, there are five really important dates that help drive the flow of the narrative. It really begins as early as 1930 with our main character in Wilfred Butler and, of course, his estate. And 1930, he will suffer a terrible tragedy. He'll lose his wife to tuberculosis. In 1933, his daughter, if that wasn't enough, his daughter is going to be raped and traumatized to the point that in 1935, he is going to take his resources and basically erect an asylum on his own premises and commit his own daughter into that asylum. But in that same year, he's going to see that what he has basically created is doing more destruction than the help he thought it would do, and so he ultimately, well, when the, and I don't know if this is much of a spoiler or not, but I mean, this really lends to the creepiness of the film. We'll get flashbacks that highlight the moment that he decides to basically pull the plug on this thing. And when all the doctors, psychiatrists, or whatnot, they're all getting drunk and have eaten their fill around the table in the house, he goes out to where the inmates are kept and locked up and retrieves his daughter, who he wants to get out of there, but unleashes the inmates upon the doctors, which that scene alone, as far as a flashback, and the color that they use, the sepia, I think it's called, this kind of reddish brown texture to the film, which really lends this nightmarish sort of creepy quality. So you see this scene really begin to unfold. A lot of it's off screen, off camera, whatever, but it still, man, works the imagination. Unfortunately, in his attempt to pull the plug, it only puts his daughter in great danger. Unbeknownst to him, his daughter is subsequently then attacked, I think raped again, maybe, but killed by the inmates, whom just really fuels up the anger and bitterness within him to the point, well, these inmates will, once they've done their deed, they'll scatter abroad and get lost into the woodwork. He'll basically, I guess, live his life out to the point where we arrive at 1950, our fourth year, on Christmas Eve. He will commit suicide as far as just not being able to go on anymore. He can't, and so he'll commit an act of suicide. That seems to put the town at rest in terms of maybe our troubles with this estate are finally over. But then in 1970, something weird happens. Now, he has a son, and this is from part of the story way back that we're treated to. He has a son that was shipped off to California, but he is older now. We're in 1970, and he is commissioned by his late father via the will that, the estate lies in his hands. And the only thing that he is called to do is basically leave the estate in a state of as though no change has ever taken place. But in 1970, he decides, because he needs money, he decides to basically sell off the estate. And he decides to sell it off to the town for a pretty cheap price. This is the catalyst for something really bizarre to begin to unfold in very quick order, which will be very reminiscent of some of the things that we'll see in the 74 film Black Christmas. We'll have an assailant who will infiltrate this estate, take up residence, begin knocking people off. There will be a lot of creepy phone calls made, luring certain peoples in an attempt to knock off certain peoples, and it really does take on this sort of revenge tale. But it's sort of a weird inverted tale. It's you really gotta watch it. I'm really trying hard to try to keep most of it as cold as possible, because you really ought to experience this film. The transfer you're gonna find, well, let me just so things will unfold to a great sort of conclusion with some resolution involved, I guess. But it will end on a really sort of dramatic point, I guess is good to say. And so really that is sort of the story in a nutshell. The transfer, now this is the best Film Chest offers you, from what I know, the best transfer, the best package that you can find out there on the cheap, or anywhere. But the transfer is shoddy, very sketchy from, over the period, but man, I'm telling you, it almost adds to that grainy old drive-in circuit feel without having been cleaned up. I love Spider Baby, but that movie's been cleaned up to the point now where you can see some interesting flaws within the film. That it's nice to have that grainy touch. It's a bit tough at times, but I think it does help with the overall atmosphere in this film. I'm telling you, the story, when the reveal finally unfolds, and we got everything from digging up in a cemetery to diaries and hidden history and conspiracies and revenge and just one character in particular who is just sick, man, right to his core, and you really don't ever know exactly why he commits some of the crimes that he will commit, which drives this character. A lot is some is left off to the imagination. Obviously, 1970, they can't show you everything, but they show you enough, man, that drives your imagination. And I was talking with Jason from our group the other night, and I was saying, man, this is the kind of movie that if Rob Zombie ever got his hands on and could remake the way it ought to be remade, man, I'm telling you, I think he would thrive with this film. And it's almost too bad that he didn't, I don't know if he's even thought about it. I'm sure he's seen it because he's a huge fan of the drive-in circuit days. But I would be curious to know what his response would be if somebody just said, hey, Rob, did you ever think about redoing Silent Night, Bloody Night? I wonder if his eyebrows would go up a bit. But it's just one of those films, man. I'm telling you, it's a film that was sort of just dropped into my lap by surprise. It has grown on me in the 3 views. I'm just starting to adore this film in terms of just the story, man. And plus, this is a driving force for all a lot of the slasher craze that will follow after, right? We got some Bob in there and stuff, but also I wanted to say too, the director also, I watched today, he was part of, in the, over the 80s, there was an anthology show, maybe towards the late 80s, called Monsters, which is free on IMDb TV, and he did Holly's House, I think it's called Holly's House. I think it's Holly's House that he directed. It's only 21 minutes long. I highly suggest you check that out. That's pretty creepy too, in a weird way. But Silent Night, Bloody Night, have you ever seen it? And what do you think? And a lost classic? Is it ever going to get any sort of treatment? Any sort of love? I really hope somebody like Arrow 88 or somebody scoops this thing up and just decides to put the money into it, because it really deserves, it does deserve the royal treatment. So let me know what you think, man. Drop a comment down below and hit that like button. Subscribe to Body Bags, and we appreciate your support and all that you have meant. This channel wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for you. As we drive on forward into a new year, hoping it will be better than the last. Just continue to support us. I pray or ask, hope you would. And as we move on into the future, I just logged in week 300 in my Body Bags archive via Letterboxd. That link is down below. And so I am closing in about 80-some weeks from having the entirety of 6 years of Body Bags in one single location in Letterboxd, which is pretty cool. So with that, we'll always leave these things off with Go Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream.